just to kind of start out from the beginning, I was contacted by this company, Gantry. They're a 3D printed light company, and I think they're kind of like startup out in San Francisco. So they're always trying to use the latest and greatest technology, kind of reinvent the industry in that way. Um, I was actually contacted by them to promote someone else's light, because at this point in time, I think I had a pretty significant following on Instagram, and I was like, uh, I'll promote a light if I design it. So yeah, then we got to talking, and they're like, of course, let's do this. Um, and I think a lot of my philosophy comes from kind of this very simplistic, kind of clever moment. I try to incorporate a very solid kind of concept into each product I design, and try to also play to the strengths of whoever I'm designing for, or whatever client I'm designing for. So of course, with Gantry, their lights are 3D printed, and I was trying to figure out, okay, I mean, 3D printing is great because there's a lot less constraints, right? You don't have to worry about undercuts or injection molding or mass manufacturing constraints. That you can do some crazy stuff with 3D printing. But then I was also thinking, like, well, if you can design anything, then there's not really any constraints around playing to their strengths or anything like that. So um, I kind of stumbled upon this idea that I was thinking about, and I have some things here. So 3D printing is, it's kind of like a hot glue gun, and it just goes in layers and it builds up an entire form. But it also has this like structure on the inside. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I mean, not many, manufacturing processes have this internal structure. Um, this grid-like structure. And I was like, well, what if I kind of played to that effect? Like, what if I use that grid structure to my advantage and as inspiration? And so like I started, mocking up some more grids, um, and I started shining lights through it. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of a cool technique. It's got this kind of like pixelated effect. And then right then and there, I was like, oh, a pixelated effect. That's kind of a cool, unique way to highlight both the gantry's processes and also create that really strong kind of interactive, or not interactive, but like playful aesthetic that I like to do with my products. So, I think that was really um, the core concepts. But of course, I explored all kinds of other concepts, and I think. Let me see if I can show you some here. So, of course, oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Wasn't sure if it was through the headset or the mic. Um, so this was like my initial exploration, uh, I guess, page or room. Um, I had all these ideas for the light, which I think most of these kind of preface the pixel aesthetic. But I was still kind of thinking about how can I, bring that kind of cleverness or you know very strong core concept to a light. I had all these ideas around like, oh, what if you just tilted it and you could change the direction of the light. This one was kind of interesting. This was like some sort of exhaust pipe, and as you twisted the little handle, you could shine the light through the tube. Um, But, this was like so much fun to just go in here and just hash out a ton of concepts and just explore. Um, I think this was also a strong contender too, was this idea of having kind of a big kind of dome or shield and then kind of bouncing the light off of that dome. Um, but I got to this pixel aesthetic, and then, I think the idea was, how do I play with the pixel and the form of the object? And, going back to kind of the core idea, the whole concept is to really just highlight the pixel itself. I'm not really trying to, play with the form or exaggerate the form. I mean, the part that is the enjoyable part is the pixel. And so that's the part I wanted to show off. And so I kind of was exploring different forms, something super simple. Maybe it was just a cylinder, maybe it was a cone. And, it's fun to just kind of, in Gravity Sketch, I would just, make a copy and tweak it a little bit. Before I got to the kind of discovery of that pixelated effect, it was a lot of exploration in Gravity Sketch. Just trying to find different forms and stuff, and trying to also bounce back and think about that whole idea of 3D printing. And it is kind of this yin and yang of digital and physical, or VR and pen and paper. Like, it's all mixed together. But I like to take these sketches and render them out in these tune materials, add some kind of noise to them. I think this kind of aesthetic is nice because it plays to the fact that these aren't necessarily perfect 3D models. They're kind of sketch 3D models, and to render them out in kind of a sketchy way makes them feel very kind of raw and real. So I don't know, it's been something I'm experimenting with. But yeah, so the next kind of part of this story was this idea that I came up with here. So I decided to just go with this simple kind of cone shape. And then the grid diffuser would be kind of just printed like this out of this kind of diffusive material. I'm not sure, is diffusive the right word? Maybe not. But it had, it created this kind of pixelated effect. And then it would just slot into the lamp. Part of the constraints of gantry was they already have a light bulb and like a light bulb system, so you have to kind of play with that. Obviously, if you wanted to like create a flat panel with LEDs, you could create a pixelated effect. But I think it's fun to kind of play within the constraints. I think it can create a unique idea and form. So I had that guy. I've also, like, before I printed out that big one, I printed out a mini one. So it's fun to kind of do smaller, quicker kind of ideas just to be able to, hash them out. I mean, this one's solid. This is just piece of paper. There's no grid on this one. And Gantry, I submitted the concept to Gantry, and they're like, yes, this is great. We like it. Let's make it. So their first pass at it was this engineered concept. So this one has like screw holes, and the engineering team at Gantry kind of took my concept and created a actual kind of finalized version. We played around. There's a lot of discussion around how to make the pixelated effect look kind of radiating. I didn't want it to be just kind of washed out. I wanted to have this kind of really core center and radiate out. And we realized that we have to change the hole sizes to get that, to create that effect. So there's a lot of work going into changing the hole sizes. And I think, around this time, I was just kind of working on it. I think I had one of these 3D models in my room, just kind of pretending as if it was real and kind of having it um, in context. And just sitting around having it for 3-5 months in my room, I realized that I didn't really like this cone shape. It just felt a little bit too blunt or sharp. Um, so I decided to kind of explore different shapes again, go back and explore different shapes. And I think you might have seen a few of those in Gravity Sketch. Do my screen share again. I mean, I think this might have been a SolidWorks model at this point. But the idea was, I think the cone shape was just a little bit too sharp. And also the cone shape made the light look bigger. So when you have that curve at the back, whenever it's on kind of an angle, it curves around and almost looks thinner. It's more of an illusion. And so, after I did this little 3D print again, this mini 3D print, I went ahead and just made a big one. Just it's quicker to make it out of cardboard sometimes than 3D print it. But if you kind of look at the front of it and curve it around, you're taking away, maybe an inch or two of this back portion because it's not sharp right there. So I like the aesthetic of it kind of being a little bit more sleek and thin. So then, of course, we have to go back to the drawing board. I created another light. With a 3D printed back. I think the engineering team had sent me this 3D printed file so I could assemble it all together. And so this is like the real deal, has a light into it. And then there was a lot of work again, like playing with those holes. It's hard to see, but I was like taping off some of the holes just to play around with how the light would shine through. So this is just like a piece of paper, but it's super beneficial to be able to just 3D print something and then, be able to tape off the holes, adjust the holes. I printed out a bunch of these kind of face plates to be able to like just swap out, just plop this one in, swap it out. Again, a lot of adjusting with the holes. The adjusting with the holes took a long time. And then there's also a lot of work on this actual face plate here. Originally I had it so that both the grid and the face were connected. But Gantry said that they had to make them separate pieces just for consistency of the quality of the print. And which is fine. I think that was a good move. And this is just attached, glued onto the grid. There's also a lot of exploration into how the grid should look, like, and the size of the grid too. So is it a centered square, or is the center a cross? Is it big squares? Things like that. So I settled on something pretty in the middle. And yeah, there's, I finally finished it. They sent me a prototype. Let's see. Final model here. Oh, I gotta plug it in. Too many lights. Not enough outlets. It looks a little bit better if it's dark in here, but You can see I worked really hard to get that grid looking just beautiful. And at nighttime, it's like, it's good. It's good. So yeah, so that's kind of the design phase of it. Of course, a whole nother phase of it is how do you present it online? How do you show it off? I got to visit Gantry's office and check out some of their 3D printers and visit. I mean, they did a lot of work too, just like figuring out how to engineer this thing. This was at their office. They had 3D printed a bunch of them, painted a bunch of different colors. Um, I also played around with just rendering it out, how it would look finalized too. And then, of course, I got some nice photography done. I got it. My good friend Sean Davidson took some amazing photos of the pixels, so I think it turned out really good. Yeah, and you can check out a bunch of photos on my website, baker.studio, or on Behance. Add this little kind of cap to the back so you could change the light bulb, take it out. So yeah, and it launched last week, I think. It's been a long time coming, but I think the final result turned out amazing. So